So in general, since you mentioned the troll, I think that the trolls too are going to become sort of a dying breed in years to come. That's my opinion. And any person who considers himself to be an advocate of Linux or a necessity in the community will find himself or herself obsolete. And this is what happened with PJ, where she saw that Linux was being attacked again, especially Android was being attacked again. But then she says, but then we have Google, and Google is worth like $200 million or whatever, and they can do fine without me. They don't really need me as a community member to explain the legalese. They can hire lots of legal experts. And she realized that the Linux has grown up, and she did say that, has grown up to be a mainstream thing, and Android has basically won the mobile market, an increasingly important market of smartphones and mobility and so on. So advocacy of Linux is not dead. It basically achieved its goals, and now we are moving into the next phase of things, and we have to think about the topics that we speak about in this show occasionally, things like digital rights and things to do with technology beyond Linux.
Well, the other side of the trolls and stuff and the advocacy is when you've got a company that's dying, that's heyday is well in the past. They have very few people who are actually advocating them and promoting them because they actually want to. It's only because they have something financially to gain because of it. When that platform gradually loses more and more and more, you find that, I mean, the company has to scale back. They'll be cutting projects left, right and centre. Part of those budgets will be the PR budgets. So if people who are used to being paid to keep churning out Microsoft comments, pro-Microsoft comments on blog posts and forums and all that, when they stop getting paid to do that, do they have that belief in Microsoft that, hey, I'm going to post for free? You don't have to pay me, I'm going to continue to do it for free. No, of course they're not. They're doing it because they're paid to do it.
Yeah, and
they don't believe in the cause. That's the difference between the whole, once they grasp the whole concept of openness, of free software, of open source, of open culture, they grasp that, they realise it's a genuinely good thing that's of the people, by the people, for the people. And once they grasp that, they're not going to let that go. I mean, that's why free software people do lots and lots of stuff of their own accord. They put their own money, their own time, their own skill into forwarding that. They don't get paid for it. It doesn't matter. They'll find a way to do it, even if they've done loads and loads of overtime. They're really knackered. So I'll just churn out a blog post tonight, and I'll mention, this program I found the other day. I'll give a little shout to that. So it's, it carries on without money, and with Microsoft, that's not going to happen. So the further they fall, that's going to affect the PR budgets, and that will affect the.
The reason they used to cover Microsoft is because people were actually interested in the articles. It was an actual, largely sought after topic. I went to Google Trends the other day and I put in Microsoft, and I suggest some listeners do that too. They basically decline. So, and there is also lots of suggestions in the surveys and things, companies put in PR, which does like surveys around companies going up and down and who's covered more in the news. And Microsoft is very sharply down. So, what I could give you a very long list now of people whom I know, and I used to call the Microsoft boosters because they're journalists and they write quite professionally, but all they ever cover is Microsoft, and it's almost always pro Microsoft because it's based on press releases. It's really derived from announcements from Microsoft. And these people are defecting to different companies. Some of them to Apple. Some of them start to cover things like Google and Amazon. And the reason they do so is because they were never directly paid by Microsoft, but they were paid perhaps for adverts or for writing content. But if people don't read their articles, and if Microsoft seems like a declining company, they say, well, I have to change my focus. And like I said, I can give you a very good list of recently major Microsoft experts who moved to other areas and maybe even leave the sites where they used to write. So the number of people covering Microsoft and advocating them under the guise of news, that's declining, definitely. That's also one of the reasons I don't really have much to write these days about Microsoft. I said it openly. I just don't find much news about Microsoft. That's the worst that can happen to them, except for PR. But PR you can usually tell apart. You just go to Twitter and you see these accounts from Microsoft, and you just say, oh, that's just not news. That's just an account created for PR purposes.
Well, we'll end this on the last time I wrote an article on my site about Microsoft, and just checked, was the 30th of March, which, although what was only 12 days ago, it's still a considerable time in the tech world to have not written an article involving Microsoft. So I think that says something for me personally. Right, gentlemen, I think we'll close the show off there. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show and downloading it, or thank you for reaching out. I hope, after looking at the feedback, and certainly some of the feedback that we get from the aforementioned dubious trolls that lurk in the forums, that they've had their pens and paper out, because the one thing I've noticed over the last few weeks is that they like noting down times and claiming we said something at this point in the show. So I hope they've been very satisfied today with what they've heard, and I hope they've got a few times, and I'm no doubt that they'll be quoting that in a news group in the next couple of days. So thank you very much for listening to all the Windows Microsoft advocates, and I look forward to reading your comments. We're going to end today on another track, another little gem I found. It won't be to everybody's taste, so I apologise for those who don't share my love of death metal. And this track's called The Curse and the Serpent, and it's by a band called Pandemonium from an album called Whispers. Very good track. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Got it off Tremendo, which is a brilliant source of Creative Commons works, so get yourself over to both sites. Both the featured tracks will have their links on the show notes, and hopefully if you like their music, you'll go and support the band, and we'll see you next time.